Welcome to the first BCLI issue series of the program year. Our BCLI issue series is a public learning panel as one of the public components of our Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute. Um, and I'll go ahead and do a quick introduction of who we are and what our program is, as I noticed that there are some newer names joining us today. Just before I do that, just some housekeeping rules. If you can, please mute yourself unless you are asking a question or speaking at the end of the presentation during our Q&A session. This session will be recorded and it'll be uploaded to the Nexus YouTube channel and sent to attendees in the coming days, and we'll also have it uploaded onto our website as well. So thanks for your cooperation. So just a brief overview, our Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute is a 7-month leadership program that works to build more engaged and powerful communities in our region by equipping BIPOC and other shout-out community members to serve on city, county, metro, and state boards and commissions, and all levels of government. In fact, at this point, we actually have had a couple of alumni get placed on both national and international boards as well. So we're very proud of that. In addition, a couple of folks in our 147 alumni body have actually gone on to win elected office as well. In our program, we train across these 5 different issue areas: economic development, health, housing, transit, and workforce development. And tonight's issue series is um, about how can we thrive and survive and be resilient in the face of the ongoing attacks on civil society under this current federal administration. We know that in the work that we do in civic engagement, as we are engaged in systems change, that we are the target of a lot of different places that don't want to see us succeed, especially as we are working in systems that historically have not been built for us, and the outcomes and processes that have not been um, built to be inclusive of us, and especially within the context of this political environment at the federal level. There are ongoing attacks against our work in our sector, whether that is our public sector, private sector, or in our nonprofit sector. There are campaigns to disempower us and to make us lose hope. Every day there are different laws or executive orders that being churned out to try to make us feel disheartened and lose hope and lose faith. And so we figured that one of our issues here is this year would be very appropriate and timely to be focused on how can we focus on our whole health and wellness, our spiritual well-being, and our mental health, and ensure that we survive and thrive. Um, and actually, I'm so sorry, I forgot to introduce myself and my partner in crime here. My name's Chai Lee. I'm the program director of the BCLI here, and I'm joined with my colleague Christine Lien. We have been working together as a team for a year and a half now. Our program has been in existence for 12 years now, so we are in the 12th cohort. And our BCLI program is actually a replication program. The originator is Urban Habitat out of Oakland, California. It's a superb um, BIPOC-led organization that focuses on environmental justice policies, but they also work on all areas of racial equity. And they were founded by a Black architect about 40 years ago. And they started the program in 2009. And in 2013, we got permission to replicate the program here in the Twin Cities. So with that, I'm going to let my wonderful colleague Christine introduce our wonderful speaker for tonight.
Thanks, Chai. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Christine. I'm the program assistant for the Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute, and our special presenter tonight is Noel Nix. He's what the BCLI calls a superstar trainer, which means he spent many years speaking for us and training for us at multiple events. So we're always very grateful. Just some background, originally from Michigan, Noah has spent most of his life in Minnesota, where he's developed a deep appreciation for both the vibrancy and the challenges in our community after seeing and experiencing the struggles faced by those working in community. Over the course of his career with the city of St. Paul and Ramsey County, Noah has embarked on a new journey in mental health to extend compassionate care to individuals and couples seeking healing and growth. His approach to counseling is rooted in person-centered, multicultural, feminist, and radical healing perspectives. As a Black heterosexual cisgender man, he is dedicated to creating a safe, inclusive space where you can explore your thoughts and emotions without judgment or bias. And so, with that, I will hand it over.
Hey, thank you. I am so excited to be here with you. And I have a lot of ground that I am hoping to cover. I'm also hoping that this can be a little bit of a conversation. I have some discussion prompts along the way to invite you into conversation, but also if you have questions, feel free to stop me. So today we'll do some introductions. I'll tell you a little bit about myself beyond the great introduction that Christine gave, so you know the perspective that I'm bringing to this work. I'll talk a little bit about resistance and sort of the frame of the art of war, knowing your opponent and knowing yourself as we think about sort of the political dark arts. And then resistance and self-care, some planning work that we can do for resilience, and then opening it up for more general discussion and questions. So if you could throw in the chat, just so I have a sense of who's in the room, your name, your professional affiliation, if you're part of BCLI or you're already on a board, the board or commission you serve on, or and you're targeting, and then what's one thing you're hoping to get from today. And as you guys are dropping stuff in the chat, Chai, they do have access to the chat.
Yeah, I think everyone should be able to chat.
Awesome. So throw that in. I'll kind of take a look at that as folks are populating that, but I'll keep going. As you heard in my introduction, I spent the better part of 15 years working in local government. My whole theory of change is that if government can be an effective partner with community, and we can get resources into community hands, that would impact individuals and just create individual opportunity for folks who oftentimes are left at the margins of our society. So this is a picture from the staff swearing in back in 2018 for the folks who were on Mayor Melvin Carter's staff at that time. So a lot of smiling faces, a lot of optimism. So if that's how it started, this would be kind of how it went. So 2020 hit. And of course, we had the work from home order or the stay-at-home order, and of course, the uprising in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And so one of my other duties as assigned was to go to as many protests as I could as the representative for the mayor's office and just let folks know that I was there to be a resource. And as we all know, for those of us who were sort of in that protest space or just around during that time, it was just a very emotionally intense, traumatizing time. And for me, that really started to open my eyes to the mental toll that the work that we all do takes, and really led me to think about, okay, what does that mean for my positionality if I recognize that mental health support is going to be a part of making sure that we can sustain this work. So, finished my master's just in May in counseling psychology. I'm now working as a pre-licensed mental health therapist. So, why defense against the dark political arts? If one or two folks maybe want to come off mute and share what came up for you when you saw or heard the title for this session.
Darth Vader.
Say more about that.
Well, I mean, I immediately went to Star Wars and thinking of, I mean, not just Star Wars solely, but I actually thought of Machiavelli and sort of some art of war angles, all all mixed together, really.
Well, you must have got a hold of my PowerPoint because there's going to be a few Star Wars references in here. But yes, you think about like the Force and just using powers for good or for evil. Maybe one other sort of reaction to the title for the talk and kind of what images or ideas came to your head when you reacted to it and thought about signing up today.
I I know it's Jean-Marc here. Thank you for having me. I thought about all the alarming developments out of Washington and how really civil society is almost under siege, and how we can be resilient in the face of an onslaught of attacks what against all of our institutions. Over.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And we'll dig into that because there's an intentionality to everything that's going on. Um, so the reference I was thinking of was Harry Potter. So if folks have seen or read the Harry Potter series, they're so it's like a wizarding school, and you go to learn how to practice magic. And one of the classes you take is called Defense Against the Dark Arts. So it's literally learning about dark magic so that you can defend yourself against dark magic. So it's the idea of understanding that there are these tools, these tactics out there, and how they work so that you aren't as susceptible to them as someone who doesn't understand them. And so, where we'll start with that, in sort of the vein of learning about the political dark arts very briefly tonight, is Sun Tzu's principle of knowing your enemy or your opponent. And so, one tactic that folks may have heard about before that is used by the administration and the MAGA movement is called flood the zone. Who knows who this individual is who's on the screen? Yeah, it says in the little clip thing, but who knows who this is?
Stephen Bannon.
Yep. And what do you know about him?
He was a campaign manager for Trump's first campaign. He was the head of Breitbart. Before that, he did a documentary on Sarah Palin. He is basically an architect of MAGA. Over.
That is absolutely right. There's nothing I can add to that. So I will let you hear from him directly on what it means to flood the zone.
It's just attack, 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 keep driving it, flood the zone, overwhelm them. It gets to be a psychological thing. They don't even know what to choose and picking. You see it by the coverage. They're overwhelmed. They don't know where to turn. They don't have the normal levers of power they could grab. And so they're kind of adrift.
So if you feel off balance and anxious about everything that's happening out of Washington, it's because that's exactly the way they want you to feel. The idea is to push so much change and so much policy into the public agenda that it feels like we don't have any footing. We don't know where or how to respond. I like a different articulation of this from a Star Wars series called Andor. And if you haven't seen it, you don't need to be a sci-fi fan. It's all about sort of basically like revolution. So if you know the Star Wars story, it's a story of rebellion and revolution against a totalitarian regime. And Andor is a series
Attack,
that
attack.
basically uh, sort of digs into the everyday folks who are a part of that movement. So this is a character named Nemec. He is a revolutionary fighter, but also is writing a manifesto about the revolution, sort of to give sort of like so a thought leader within the revolution within the Star Wars universe.
Really, the only thing keeping us from liberty is a few more ideas. A few more ideas. I mean, it's so confusing, isn't it? So much going wrong, so much to say, and all of it happening so quickly. Pace of repression outstrips our ability to understand it, and that is the real trick of the Imperial thought machine. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident, but they have a fight on their hands, don't they? Our elemental rights are such a simple thing to hold, they'll have to shake the galaxy awfully hard to loosen our grip.
So there, right, the idea that, it's harder to respond to 40 different things happening at once than just one big incident, right? So you think about the deportations, getting rid of birthright citizenship, overturning gay marriage, right? They're doing this so fast, so that we don't know as individuals where and how to respond.
Apparently, the
Ooh.
only thing keeping yes.
And the next sort of set of tactics are what President Trump calls his three rules. So if folks have seen the movie The Apprentice or read the book The Art of the Deal, um, uh, President Trump was mentored back in the 80s and the 90s by a gentleman named Roy Cohn. Is there anyone who knows who Roy Cohn was?
I don't know, but he looks like Trump.
So this is an actor portraying Trump. Roy Cohn was an attorney and a political operative. He sort of made his political bones by staffing, being the committee staff for a little committee called the Committee on Un-American Activities, that was chaired by Senator Joseph McCarthy. And basically, if you've heard of the Red Scare, that was a whole movement to try to call people out and blacklist them for being communists. So the congressional committee that did that work, he ran that, and then he went on to become an attorney in private practice and mentored a real estate developer in New York named Donald Trump, and imparted to him basically these three rules. And this is Sebastian Stan, who played President Trump in this movie, The Apprentice, which I highly recommend.
Right now, people need to think there's some sort of special sauce, principle, set of rules that make you different.
Well, that's easy because I have my rules. I got three rules. Okay, they're my three rules of winning. Rule one, the world is a mess. Okay, the world is a mess, Tony. You have to fight back. You have to have a tough skin. Attack, attack, attack. If somebody comes after you with a knife, you shoot him back with a bazooka. Okay? Rule two, what is truth, Tony? What is truth? You know what's truth? What you say is truth. What I say is truth. What he says is truth. What is the truth in life? Deny everything, admit nothing. You know what's true? What I say is true. And third of all, the most important, no matter how fucked you are, you never, ever, ever admit defeat. You always claim victory. Always.
You know, that sounds like the U.S. foreign policy for the past quarter century.
Well, unlike that, this actually works.
So we'll stop it there. So again, right, this idea, similar to Fled the Zone, of just always being on the attack. What truth is whatever you need it to be, right? So this very sort of loose and subjective relationship with the truth, and then finally just denying everything and always claiming that you've won, even if it's painfully obvious that you haven't. The reason that I sort of share these things is because if we are aware of and understand what our opposition is doing or what folks are doing, it makes it easier to recognize the patterns in their behavior, and for some of the things that we'll talk about later on in terms of our own sort of mental health to be more effective. One more thing that I will cover, and I will learn how to stop restarting the videos. The last tactic I'll talk about is the big lie. Who's heard this term before and has an idea of what the idea of the big lie is? So instead of me explaining it, I will let this professor from the University of California explain it.
Disinformation is a fancy word for lying. It's a kind of a subset of propaganda. Propaganda is using facts or opinions to try to convince somebody of your point of view. It may be a domestic audience or foreign power, something like that. But disinformation is a variety of propaganda in which the people producing it deliberately present false information. In short, they know they're lying. Back in the 1930s, the two masters of disinformation were Hitler and Stalin. Both of them produced what could be called the big lie. Hitler produced deliberately false information about German Jews, about Germany's history in World War I. Stalin and the Soviet Union lied about a famine that was killing millions of people. He lied about the superiority of the Soviet system. So modern disinformation, which is sped along with newspapers and radio, TV, and now the internet, really is a kind of, although it goes all the way back to the Romans, the heyday of it, it becomes incredibly more common in the 20th century. In the 1930s, with Hitler and Stalin, the big lie becomes overwhelmingly obvious. You know, Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, actually said, and here he's giving away the fact that they know they're lying. He actually said that if you repeat something, however ridiculous, enough times, you can convince people of anything you want to convince them of. You can convince them that a square is a circle. It's a matter of repetition. It's a matter of controlling the media. It's a matter of pounding away with a point of view until otherwise normal people believe it just because of the repetition.
So that should sound familiar. Uh, Trump won the 2020 election, right? Um, there are immigrants eating cats and dogs, right? Name the lie that is so ridiculous and so bald-faced, but gets repeated over and over and over until there's a segment of the population that's willing to repeat it as an accepted truth. So, with all that,
Is an offense.
um, that's a little bit just in the time that we have on the tactics that our opposition, or the administration, I should say, is using. The next principle that Sun Tzu talks about is knowing yourself, and understanding yourself. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like as a defense against these tactics. So I really like this emerging framework of mental health and counseling practice called radical healing, that's being led in part by a professor who I got to study under at University of St. Thomas, Brianna French, as well as several professors across the country. And radical healing is about finding healing in the space between recognizing systemic oppression and its impact on us and finding radical hope. And there's five principles that make up this idea of radical healing. We are going to focus in terms of a discussion on self-knowledge on two of these. One is critical consciousness, the other is cultural authenticity and self-knowledge. And so when we talk about critical consciousness, the goal here is to move from really just sort of thinking about and being aware of what is happening around us systemically to actually engaging in action that is grounded in a deep understanding of what's happening. So, what does that look like? That means building an awareness of the systems of power and privilege and oppression and how they operate. Questioning the inequities that exist within our society and understanding where and how they come from and how they're perpetuated. Understanding how our own personal experiences of marginalization, so when we experience interpersonal racism, sexism, heteronormativity, etc., how does that tie to the broader historical and social context in which we find ourselves within our country? So, how do you do that? One is to study history and compare the narratives that many of us grew up with about this country's history, our society's history, and the telling of those same historical events through the lens of our own cultures, right, and marginalized cultures. Question why things are done the way they are. Don't accept the answer, this is the way that we've always done it. Why is this the way that it's done and who benefits? Connect with others in community and share and exchange your experiences, right? You will find that um, different folks are having different sort of versions of the experiences that you're having, and that starts to build a picture of how a personal picture of how systemic oppression works and is impacting all of us. So now I want to open it up, and when we think about critical consciousness, what are other things folks think we can do to expand our critical consciousness? Well,
book clubs or something.
yes. Yes. What does that look like, Roxanne? What do you think when you think about a book club?
I think about trying to organize another motherfucking thing, but I mean, I read by myself, but I think it would be nice if we had a co-ed book club. That would be fun. I
Yeah.
don't know what it would look like. I'm just saying a book club of, things about propaganda, about psychological warfare, and then about maybe stories of resistance. I think more stories of resistance would probably be more helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And just sort of that shared coming together and learning the same thing and dialoguing about it and having the opportunity to learn together. I love that. So, when we talk about cultural authenticity and self-knowledge, the goal here is to build up our sense of pride and resilience through connecting to our cultural roots. So that includes embracing and affirming our cultural identity and the values that are connected with our cultural identity. So finding ourselves in sort of the unique set of identities that we have. So many of us may be, may have a dominant culture or a primary culture that we relate to. Some of us may be multicultural. And so going on that journey of finding what resonates from the different aspects of, the ancestors who we come from. Rejecting the pressure to assimilate into a majority culture in ways that call for us to abandon our cultural identity or distort it. Reconnecting with ancestral knowledge, traditions, and community wisdom. And so, what this looks like is celebrating ourselves, being involved in cultural celebrations and traditions. There's something that's healing about that as we go on sort of our journey of self-discovery and connection with a broader community with whom we share an identity. Push back against policies and practices that call on us to either conform or perform in personal and professional spaces in ways that feel inauthentic. So what that means is that there may be ways that we're asked to change who we are or to conform to an idea of who other people think we are. So being conscientious of when that happens in professional space and taking action to press back against that. Sitting with our elders and culture bearers and observing and asking questions and just sort of understanding through sort of that tradition of oral history and oral sharing who we are and where we come from. What else would folks suggest are great ways to connect with our sense of cultural authenticity and self-knowledge? So travel, Ria says in the chat. Do you want to come off mute and talk about that a little more?
Yeah, like for me, for myself, like, my mother's from the Philippines, and so for me, like if I want to reconnect like with my family in the Philippines, I have to travel there. So
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes getting out of the context of where we live and where we're born or where we're raised or where we find ourselves and going back to where our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors walked and lived and seeing sort of what that's like and how that impacts our perspective on who we are and how we fit into their story and how they fit into our story. Who has another idea about what it looks like to sort of foster a sense of cultural authenticity and self-knowledge? Well, I invite folks to reflect on that. We'll keep going. So, as we think about resistance, self-care is a very important concept. There are all kinds of reasons why it's important that we're going to explore in this section. But first, I want to share another favorite Star Wars clip because the thing that we know about doing anti-oppression work is that it's exhausting. And so I think this clip sort of encapsulates that. Oh, and to set it up, so the character who you're going to hear from is his name is Luthen. He is a essentially an undercover agent for the rebellion in the Star Wars universe. He sort of masquerades as an artifact stealer, but is funneling money and running operatives for the rebellion. And he's talking to one of his operatives who's actually embedded within the Imperial government.
What do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror, an audience, or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
So yeah, some days it feels kind of like that, right? Um, in terms of just what the work that we're engaged in and the different spaces that we're in sort of demands from us. Um, so what does resilience look like in the face of that? And one day we'll learn how to do this right. There we go. So self-care. Self-care is the antidote to reaching that sort of like really dark place that you saw Luthen finds himself in. And I think of self-care in three different stages. And I really like the metaphor of thinking about like how we take care of our cars or our bikes or our motorcycles. One piece is preventative maintenance, right? So the first picture there is a pit crew, right? So it's like you got to stop and fill it up with gas. You got to, check the tire pressure. You got to do sort of those everyday things that are important about just keeping the car running optimally. Then there are these moments of like critical repair, right? So I have that check engine light there. And when the check engine light turns on, that means that something is wrong. The car is still running, but something is wrong. You can certainly continue to drive the car, but it's warning you that if you do, something cataclysmic may happen if you don't see about it and take care of it, right? And then finally, there's just breakdown, right? Where the vehicle does not care that you need to pick up your kids, does not care that you need to be at work, it doesn't care. It is done operating, and the reason for the metaphor here is because in community work, we are the instrument, right? Not your computer, not your smartphone, right? You are the instrument. And so your work is only as good as your plan to take care of yourself, just like your car only runs as well as you take care of it. And so when we don't take care of ourselves, when the work is so demanding, and I want to acknowledge that the work is so demanding, and it can feel like there's no time to take care of ourselves. There's no room to take care of ourselves. We have families, we have colleagues, we have communities that depend on us and that we serve. And there are things that without self-care will inevitably happen. One of those is burnout. And burnout is not something that you would talk to a therapist and they would diagnose you with burnout. There are other things that they would probably say, like if you have the symptoms of burnout. that match with that, but it's recognized by the World Health Organization as an issue that comes out of chronic workplace stress. And I'm going to show you a brief video that I think really just sort of breaks down burnout.
Burnout is your reaction to prolonged stress that leads to mental fatigue, emotional apathy, and physical exhaustion. While most people think of burnout as a result of too much work, it can also get to us outside the office. The phenomenon often unfolds in 5 stages and can push healthcare professionals, teachers, new parents, people with chronic conditions, and anyone who bites off more than they can chew to the brink of breakdown. It can present itself as follows. First, the honeymoon. You feel happy, motivated, and excited about your new challenge and, as a result, take on a lot of responsibilities. Then there is the onset of stress. The initial enthusiasm gets tempered by the realities of your daily routine. You first start feeling tired and then anxious about not being able to handle everything you signed up for. Slowly, signs of stress begin to surface, and you may develop a negative tunnel vision. Your limited capacity to pay attention to other things in life can lead to feelings of loneliness. Chronic stress becomes your constant companion, and even tiny new tasks can set you off in a spiral of either anxiety or rage. Life may now simply feel unfair, and a setback can feel like a personal attack or a deep injustice. Eventually, you are just exhausted or develop psychosomatic symptoms such as migraines or body aches. In your free time, you may now just want to shut down. When you eventually burn out, apathy can take over. In defense against chronic stress, your brain just stops caring. This is why your productivity plummets and you may become negative or cynical. Chronic headaches, insomnia, complete neglect of your own needs, or the desire to just drop out can become part of your daily routine. You reach habitual burnout when this stressful state becomes your new normal and you experience constant cognitive fatigue, physical problems, or a mood that alternates between apathy and anger. Eventually, you may feel trapped in a vicious cycle of despair with no way out. A diagnosis of major depression may be the first turning point towards your path to recovery. To fully heal from burnout can take months or even years. This is why recognizing symptoms early on is important, because then we can distance ourselves from the main stressor, create enough me time to cool down, and do whatever is necessary before it's too late.
I'll stop there.
Burnout is your reaction to prolonged.
So I've listed here, and I'll make sure the PowerPoint's available, just what burnout looks like, but basically emotional exhaustion, so that feeling that we can't keep going, and sort of that sort of dead numb feeling, depersonalization or cynicism. So, we tend to, encounter a lot of things that may chip against our sense of hope, but when we reach that point of hopelessness, that's a sign that we're in complete hopelessness. That's a sign that we're in burnout. And then a sense of reduced efficacy, that do our efforts even matter? Are they even making a difference? Another thing that can happen is compassion fatigue. And with compassion fatigue, that basically comes from the fact that when we're doing community focused work, we are extending our mental energy and doing that emotional labor and caring and caring and caring. And the metaphor that's often used is like we're pouring out of our cup, and then eventually our cup is empty. And when we reach that point where our cup is empty, we reach a point where we may feel like we don't have capacity to empathize or connect with those with whom we work or serve. So a number of different ways that this shows up emotionally, a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, irritability, cognitively, might be hard to focus at work. Again, sort of that creeping sense of cynicism or disillusionment, being tired, feel headache, can't sleep, withdrawing from others, just sort of checking out maybe from work, and feeling like you just can't even go in. We might start using recreational substances to sort of self-medicate, or food to self-medicate. A close cousin of that, right, is trauma. And trauma is something that comes from having an extremely intense experience where we feel that our health or safety, or our very life are at risk. And trauma is something that is very common, but not everything that is stressful is traumatic, and not everything that's traumatic leads to a disordered trauma response. And so it's very important to be aware of the fact that we may experience stressors, and those around us may experience stressors, but there are very specific signs if we're having sort of a disordered response that might need more support. So, direct trauma is when something happens to us or someone who we're extremely close to. Vicarious trauma is something that happened to someone else and they lay it basically at our feet. So, if you do a lot of community facing work, we hear stories about folks who've had horrific things happen to them. And over time, we can have a trauma response that is very similar to if it were to have happened to us directly. And there's even theory around trauma that we all sort of have sort of like a trauma load that we can carry. So think of it as like putting like rocks in a bag. So every time someone shares something with us, it's like putting a rock in the bag, and you reach a point where the bag is just too heavy to carry anymore. And so, around trauma disorders, there's some very specific symptoms that will come up. It may be pains in the body, sleep disturbances, nightmares about the trauma, intrusive thoughts about the trauma, where you're just thinking about or doing something else, and suddenly you're thinking about the horrible thing that happened to you or someone else. Irritability, withdrawing, hypervigilance. So there are some very specific things to look for. So knowing that those are all things that we can experience, or challenges that we can face mentally in the work that we're doing. What does it look like to plan for resilience? And so, Sun Tzu again talks about this idea of planning before we go in as opposed to going in and then planning. And I really like this quote from World War II general and former President Dwight Eisenhower. Plans are useless, but planning and the thinking that goes into planning is indispensable. So, going back to this framework of radical healing, there are components to the approach to radical healing that can directly feed our sense of resilience. One is around tapping into our inner strength and collective strength and engaging in resistance. So the goal here is to draw strength from the past to inform our present and future struggles. So we can find meaning and find and draw from the strength of our ancestors by connecting the struggles that we're going through to the broader narrative of the historical struggle against oppression. We can recognize that there is a healing power in exercising our collective strength together and drawing strength from one another, and really building a sense of camaraderie in the work that helps us to draw strength from one another as opposed to feeling isolated in the work. Another piece of this is celebrating collective victories, and making a point of doing that, and celebrating our shared commitment to continuing to fight injustice. So, practically, what this looks like is, of course, participating in groups that engage in culturally grounded social action, dialoguing with those who've been in the struggle with you. So, talk about the work, talk about the impact it's having on you, talk about what's hard, talk about what excites you. Um, Experience that sense of community in the work. Support and mentor young people who are engaged in the struggle, and support their work and spotlight their work. Um, and then also use your artistic talents to tell the story of the current struggle. So what does it look like in song? What does it look like in short story? What does it look like in photography? What are other ways that folks feel like are important for just engaging in collective strength and resistance? Everyone's so shy. I assure you there's no wrong answers. Yes, what are some ways, I can repeat that. What are some ways that we, besides what's on the screen, that we can sort of participate in building collective strength and resistance?
Incorporated into your life.
Yeah. So say more.
I mean, the workplace, when people encounter uncomfortable discussions and you sort of stand in your truth or speak from the heart, it gives it life. You
Yeah.
can read all you want and you can participate or be a participant, but then to bring it into daily, hourly,
Yeah.
um, uh, uh, give it life within your daily life is a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I like how you're talking about just sort of thinking about conscientiously about how we can do that on our own. And I would say that sort of the flip side of that is acknowledging when we see others doing that in the spaces that we're in.
Yes.
So we're building that sort of sense of connection and
Yep.
collective power and not necessarily feeling like we're out here sort of acting on our own. So another piece of all this is radical hope. And radical hope is an idea that I just really, really love because it's about maintaining this belief in the possibility for justice and liberation despite the challenges that we're facing. And let's face it, right now it's really, really hard, and it takes some effort to imagine something beyond the everyday that we're facing in the news and in our families and in our communities. But when we think about building radical hope, what that looks like is building a collective vision for a future where we all belong, no matter what our background looks like. And then anchoring our hope in collective action, not just our own individual achievement or our own individual sense of optimism. I think of it in terms of the saying from African saying like I am because we are because I am, right? It's not just about me, and it's not just about you, it's about us together. Recognizing that hope fuels resistance and prevents despair from taking over. But then practically, what does it mean to fuel our sense of hope? Dialogue with others. Like just embrace your radical imagination and say, like, what if we lived in a world where no one had to worry about what they were going to eat tonight? Like, what if we lived in a world where everyone had a place to sleep? And just even using the arts to like embrace the sights, the sounds, the stories, the narrative, like creating the feeling of living there. And sort of an art form that really does this really well is Afrofuturism, if you're familiar with it, right? Just the idea of Black people in the future. So futuristic imagery, right? That's very technology infused, but it's Black people, right? Like we're there, right? And we're powerful. Celebrate those small victories and the possibilities that they create, right? So instead of like, well, yep, we won this election, but we don't have enough votes on the council, right? Well, you have a voice and a seat at the table, and that is the stepping stone to getting the next seat and the next seat, right? Learn and share stories about past victories against oppression. So grounding our actions in the larger narrative, the intergenerational struggle for liberation. What else? What else do folks feel like can sort of stoke our feeling of radical hope?
In the chat, and I really love Afrofuturism. Not only because like black people in the future, but I love that part of it. But I'm also one of the things that I learned about radical hope is that because of the society that we live in, we often think that people just walk in hope and it's something that they speak of and walk in like it's like osmosis. But I was as an educator previously before I started working with the city. Um, I was just like I was with educators, I was with organizers, and it actually you have to work a muscle to imagine a world with hope. Like imagine a world, and so like we would do exercises around like what if there wasn't hunger? What if there wasn't starvation? What if there wasn't war? What if there wasn't like police brutality? Like something really simple. And so I think it sounds simple, but it really takes a muscle to imagine a world without the things that oppress us. And so yeah, it's just something to be stated. I think that this isn't just things that people do every day because they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, Melanie. Just the idea that we have to do conscientious exercises, right? It's not something that maybe happens sort of spontaneously or reflexively. And there's power in doing it together. Other thoughts or ideas? One thing I kind of want to remind us is so part of my background is in urban planning, and one thing that they teach you when you go to school to be an urban planner is that everything that is man-made in our society started within the mind of someone. Every road, every sidewalk, every house, every skyscraper, every car, everything you see that is man-made started inside someone's mind. And so that is evidence of the power of an idea. And when that idea is shared and becomes a part of a collective movement, it takes on a power to manifest into something that impacts our daily lives and the lives of those around us. And so part of radical hope is recognizing the power of imagination, the power of the ideas that we have and the ideas that we share with others. And then lastly, what I want to talk about is emotional wellness and support. And so that's ensuring that the practice of healing is ongoing and communal, shared, not just individual. So what that includes is addressing the psychological, emotional, and spiritual wounds that are caused by racism and oppression and the fight against racism and oppression. Prioritizing our mental health, finding and creating space for joy, rest, and community care as a part of our work of resistance. It's not a luxury. It's not a nice to have, right? It is something that is fundamental to creating the change that we want to see in the world. It's mandatory. Creating spaces for storytelling, witnessing, and processing our trauma together. And so, from a practical standpoint, that means doing individual and group therapy, really connecting with a mental health practitioner who you resonate with and can connect with and can unpack things that maybe are difficult to share with those around you. But also finding those group therapy spaces where you can process deeply with others who are having a lot of the same shared experiences. Um, Learn and incorporate cultural healing practices into your self-care. So, of course, like books like Braiding Sweetgrass or My Grandmother's Hands are really great resources and really great starting places for thinking about how to incorporate those cultural practices into your own wellness routine. Normalize discussions about mental health in your spaces, in your family, in your with your organizations at work, and include wellness and mental health breaks in organizing spaces. Know the signs of when you or someone else is having a mental health crisis. So I very briefly touched on symptoms. There's a lot of great information from SAMHSA, which I cited earlier, as well as from NAMI, to recognize when someone's having a mental health crisis, and even engage in training about how to intercede in a way that's helpful, and learn about the community resources that are available. What are other things that folks feel like we can do? Well, I want to invite you to sort of reflect on that as I sort of lay out some practical next steps. One is to create a self-maintenance plan, right? Like, our cars come with instruction manuals that tell us like when to change the oil, when to rotate the tires, etc. We ourselves do not come with manuals. We have to write the manual for ourselves, right? So, what is our proactive maintenance plan look like? Who do we lean on? What activities do we find restorative, emotionally, spiritually, physically? How often do I need to engage in those activities in order to feel like I am a version of myself that I like and that I feel a sense of strength? What does it look like when your check engine light comes on? What are the signs of burnout, compassion fatigue, trauma response in your life for you personally? What are the thoughts that come up? What are the feelings that come up? What are the behaviors that you start to engage in? What's the feedback you hear from others when you are not in a good place mentally, whether that be your family members, your teammates at work, folks who you organize with in community? And then what action steps will you commit to taking when you recognize that those signs of your check engine light are present? So, what are the mental health resources you're going to connect with? Who are the community supports that you're going to lean on? What does it look like, right? To take a respite period, to use your earn sick and safe time, right? To use your vacation time, to ask for help from family or friends when it comes to childcare, right? To create that space to really sort of more intensely heal. And then what is your breakdown plan? Who can you call? What are the resources that you're going to access, right? Who are those folks who are your ride or dies, who like they are your 911 call if you feel like you are absolutely at the end of your rope? Don't wait to think about those things until you feel like you're at breakdown. Start thinking about those things now. And if you're at breakdown, if you're in this and you're like, oh my gosh, I might be in a situation where my check engine light's on, or I might be in a breakdown, then reach out and ask for help now. And just do things that like spark joy for you, right? So I kind of randomly threw this in. I'm a blurred, and it's Star Trek for me because Star Trek is this future where like we're traveling along the stars, and you can just like food magically appears and everything. So this is me out at Universal Studios Hollywood at this special Star Wars thing they did, and I have my uniform on, and I am actively living that future that I want for humanity, right? So I don't think you have to go to Hollywood to do it, right? But what are spaces that you can put yourself in that are just like, just overjoy you, right? Like whether it's like a concert or listening to a certain like artist at home or going to like whatever it is, whatever that space is for you, connect with that space because that's not a luxury, that's not a nice to have. That is a part of your resistance to engage in those joyful moments that leave you feeling a sense of maybe a little bit of escape, a little bit of happiness, but spark your imagination for what's possible because that's where you find radical hope. And so I also want to just talk about really quickly. I know we're right at time. Engaging a therapist. There's never a right time to engage a therapist. If you think it might be the right time, it's probably the right time. There's some tips here in terms of thinking about different aspects of who a therapist is and how they operate to kind of go through, like, whether it's Psychology Today or doing a web search, check your insurance coverage and your EAP, or your employee assistance program options. Ask for referrals from family and friends. And part of why that's important is because oftentimes we don't talk about the fact that we're in therapy, and there might be a bunch of people around you who are seeing therapists, right? And that's part of how we normalize conversations around mental health. And then ask a therapist who you're interested in to do a free consultation so you can get a sense of who they are and share with them what you want to work on. Here's a bunch of different BIPOC focused clinics locally. And then I know we're right at time, but if folks have burning questions or feedback about what's helpful, what's resonating, or if there are things that are missing, this is a very new path for me, and my hope and my goal is to be able to give talks and trainings like this, but it will only be as good as the feedback that I get from you. So I welcome it.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take one or two quick questions for Noel. Feel free to take yourself off mute.
Enjoy it. We'll send out the PowerPoint so that you have the names of all the therapy clinics. Chai, I guess I should ask you that. The PowerPoint will be available, yes?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yep. And Noel, do you have a slide with your personal practice?
I do. There's me. Reach out to me. I am absolutely accepting clients. So if you want to work on this stuff one-on-one or with your family or with your partner, I do individual, couples, and family therapy. And my whole goal, my whole mission is to support people like you who are doing the work that you do. So to be the therapist who has been in the trenches, understand some of the experiences that you've gone through, and can help you to process some of the incredibly challenging things that you're going through, so that you can continue to do the work that you're committed to. So if I can be a support to you, please reach out to me.
All right, thanks, Noel. I'll put my last two slides back up real quick and wrap up. And in the meantime, I'll ask Christine to drop our eval link. We do evaluations at the end of every BCLI event, so we seriously take your evaluation input very seriously. So please take literally 2 minutes is 4 questions to do that. Let's see. Upcoming events, we have our BCLI cohort 12 graduation on Thursday, October 2nd. It's from 5:30 to 7. We are still trying to nail down a location. So if you jump on our mailing list, which is here, you just go to our nexuscp.org website, and you can sign up for our e-newsletter, and you'll get future events. Our second and last upcoming issue series is Thursday, September 11th. It's about how to run for public office. We'll have Wentana Milligan, State Rep Pooh Lee, and St. Paul School Board member and BCLI alumni Erica Valiant talk about how to run for office one-on-one, because a lot of our folks who come through this program tend to eventually logically want to take the next step and run for public office. And it will also cover issues campaigns as well as running for office in your own right. And lastly, just a reminder to please take the survey. And once again, thanks, Noel. You've always been a wonderful superstar training for the BCLI, and we want to thank you all for your time. And please take two minutes to do the eval. And we hope that you have a wonderful night and have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.